Well, Kelvin, welcome to the podcast, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's so good to have you on. Now I'm going to ask you my favorite question and my toughest question, and you'll probably get the entire podcast.
Okay.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
What's the best piece of advice I've ever received is to reinvent yourself every 3 years. And that came from two business owners of mine, two clients, two former clients of mine. One had seven businesses, and the other has or had 45 Pizza Huts that he sold. He had 45 Pizza Huts in the state of Maryland, and he sold them. And both of them gave me the same sound advice, which is every 3 years you should reinvent yourself. Don't get comfortable.
I like that. Yeah, because you got to keep going.
Correct. And not only that, when you get comfortable, I refer to it in my book. When you get comfortable, it's kind of like the former champ, Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson got very comfortable. And unfortunately, a gentleman named Buster Douglas came in and reminded Mike Tyson not to be comfortable. And so that kind of comes to my mind every so often when we think about change and embracing change is that, you can't get comfortable. Because if you do, just remember Mike Tyson.
I thought you were going to talk about Paul in his last fight he just had.
That's what we call making extra money when you need to.
I was like, see, you threw me off on that. I'm like, I had to go back. I'm like, he's going to talk about the last fight. I'm like, that wasn't really a fight. That was something else. But anyway, I digress.
Well, I bet you he had a few tax bills he had to pay and he needed to fight.
Something, because I don't know. I never seen him throw a fight like. Anyway, I'm curious. Think about yourself in your life, and you've had a lot of success, and you've done a lot of important things. But who are some people in your life that served as a mentor for you, or maybe an inspiration on your journey? I'm always curious. It's a chance to give them people a shout out if you want to talk about kind of give their name out there and thank them for what they did for you.
I guess the list is kind of long.
Yes.
Starting with friends, friends that I've known for 40 years, I call them family members more than friends. Everyone from my banker, my first banker, we had an honest conversation. She was very honest with me, and I'm still good friends with my banker. Ironically, I talk bad about bankers in my book and things like that. I call him the devil in my book, but this banker here, I had a great relationship with, and we still have a great relationship to this day. A marketing person of mine, without mentioning any names, because I don't want to leave anyone out, but there have been several people that have been big, key influential in my life and in my businesses. A couple of them are people that are in the marketing field, a couple of business coaches I've dealt with over the years. And more recently, there's a really good friend of mine. I call him Uncle Willie. He's in my book. I mentioned him in my book. He's a great friend of mine, and he's a business mentor. And I think he's been really influential with me because he is a self-made man in the sense of several businesses. He went through some hard times, and eventually he came through. And is a self-made man. And so people like that I really admire because they can talk the truth to you. They can let you know about the hard times. They can walk you through the hard times because there are a lot of hard times. And you just want to talk to somebody that's been there. So I would say Uncle Willie. And then last but not least, I would say my landlord. My landlord is a very giving person. His name is Don Pistorio, very given person. He's been very honest with me and very helpful and supportive for all of my businesses. I've had a 16-year relationship with him, and I just thank him. I wouldn't be here today without him and my banker. I would not be here because during some tough times, I had to renegotiate lease and renegotiate bank loans. And, if it wasn't for my banker and if it wasn't for my landlord, I wouldn't be here today. So I would say those two people are probably the biggest influence, my landlord and my banker.
That's great. So let's talk about your book. You kind of mentioned it. What inspired you or motivated you to write, get uncomfortable, or change course?
This book has been in my head since I was 18 years of age. I knew I was going to write a book. I just didn't know what it was going to be about. I grew up, I would say middle class, maybe lower middle class, like most African Americans were in my neighborhood. We weren't poor, but there were some times where we had some difficult days, like a lot of people. And so through that, and through some challenges I had in college, funding, finances, things like that, I kind of knew I wanted to share my story. I just didn't know what it was going to be. So the book I started writing 18 years ago. And it wasn't until the pandemic really hit that I actually knew what I was going to write my book about, which was Get Uncomfortable or Change Course. And the title basically is just that, is if you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to be prepared to get uncomfortable. And that get uncomfortable is a huge word and it means so much. Or change course. And change course means it may not be for you. And it's okay if it's not for you. because being an entrepreneur is all about being uncomfortable and accepting it and being uncomfortable.
I've had a lot of entrepreneurs on my podcast, and I always love to ask this question because there's a perception about entrepreneurs. And sometimes it's that they took advantage of other people to get where they are. I'd love for you to kind of address what makes entrepreneurs special and different.
I like to say, and I even said it in my book, I like to say, you can't make an entrepreneur, you're born an entrepreneur. And that means, I mean, no disrespect to those who, have become entrepreneurs without being born an entrepreneur. I mean, no disrespect. In my humble opinion, I just say that you're born an entrepreneur. And the reason why I say that is ever since I was a little kid, I always had a side hustle. I was always doing something. I was always creative. So I say you're born an entrepreneur. But as far as being an entrepreneur, no, I don't think entrepreneurs ride off the back of other people. I think entrepreneurs are those that want to set the path and have people follow them. And so what I mean by that is you have to be creative. So, you're taking an idea and you're shining it, spit shining it, you're cleaning it up and you're just going in a different direction. So I think being an entrepreneur is all about being creative, and it's not about riding the coattails of someone else, but it's about guts and, eventually glory.
I love that. I think the best description of entrepreneur was they're the ones who have the courage to implement, to act on their ideas. I like that definition.
A lot of courage it takes. It takes a lot of sleepless nights. It takes a lot of prayer. It takes a lot of friends, family. It takes a lot of support to be an entrepreneur, because, there are times when you're going to miss weddings, holidays, you're going to miss birthdays. You're going to be working. Family and friends won't understand it, so it takes a lot of courage and guts.
Yes. Another one told me that it's different when you got to sign the checks yourself.
I could remember 16 years ago writing my first check, and I even framed it and put it on my wall. I'm like, wow, this is my first big business check that I signed, right? And so it was so amazing, right? And now it's like, oh my God, I got to write another check. So it goes from being excited to writing your first big check to, oh my God, I got to write another check. Because in the back of your mind, you're like, is it going to bounce?
Right, exactly. As you think about this book you wrote, what are some key lessons in your book that you want people to know about your journey?
You have to be willing to constantly change. And I started off by saying that, but you have to be willing to change. And the reason being is if you get too comfortable, I think that's when you forget what you began and why you began your journey. So getting uncomfortable is a part of being an entrepreneur. So I think what I want people to learn or get from my book here is that we all have a journey. Some of our journeys are not as hard as others, but we all have a journey. And our journey is what makes us unique. And my journey is about writing this book and helping other people not go through some of the issues and problems that I had to go through, and to kind of help their journey be a little bit smoother. And so I think the biggest takeaway from my book here is learning little lessons from each chapter about how to be a good entrepreneur and how to be a good business owner, and to learn from other people's mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes, and that's why I wrote them in a book and talked about it in a book. And I've had a lot of health issues and problems in my book. And so it's just about overcoming challenges and overcoming obstacles in your life. And I've been through a whole bunch of them, as I've indicated in my book. And so I think the biggest takeaway from the book is that everybody has obstacles in their journey. And it's just a matter of crossing over those obstacles or knocking those obstacles down and moving forward.
So you described yourself as a serial entrepreneur. So tell us about some of the businesses that you've started.
Okay. Well, first, I think I have about 6 trademarks. A couple of them are not even being used yet because they're potential businesses in the future. But let's see. Tiki's Playhouse is a doggy daycare boarding facility. I've had that for 16 years. I own K9 and Coffee, which we're in the bar right now. You can see the logo behind us, K9 and Coffee. That was a concept because we're in the same building as Tiki's Playhouse. And so I wanted to bring dogs and coffee. And how I came up with K9 and Coffee is, back then, 9 years ago when I came up with it, coffee was the number 2 traded commodity on the stock market, and the other was oil. And so I figured dogs, coffee, and dogs, at that point, it was like a $56 billion industry. I think it's probably a $100 billion industry now, meaning dogs. And so I put the two together. And that's where K9 and Coffee came from. And we evolved into a bourbon bar. So now I do alcohol. I have bourbon, and we feature one of my favorite bourbons, which is Uncle Nearest. It's a great story. I don't know if you've ever heard about it.
No, I haven't. Tell me about it.
It's a African American owned company. Woman named Fawn Weaver and Keith Weaver. Uncle Nearest, his name is Nathan Nearest Green, and he was an enslaved man, and he actually has been credited in teaching Jack Daniels how to make whiskey. So it's a Tennessee whiskey. It's a beautiful story. I encourage all your listeners to go to the website. I encourage them to go and support Uncle Nearest. And the best thing about the Uncle Nearest brand that I really, really love is two things. One is they have it, Uncle Nearest or Nathan Green's great, great, great granddaughter, Victoria Edie Butler, is the master distiller and tastes every bottle and signs every bottle. So I do love that because it's part of history. The second thing I love is that Fawn Weaver in the very beginning set up a program where anyone who can prove that their blood of Nathan Nearest Green gets a full ride all the way up until PhD education paid for anywhere in the world, all the way up to a PhD level. So that's what I really, really love about Uncle Nearest. So much so I purchased my own barrel from Uncle Nearest. And actually I have a picture here. I met Edie Butler. So that's Edie Butler. So I met her in DC. Let's cover my face. But I met her in DC. So she's a beautiful woman, nice lady. And so that's part of the coffee shop and the bourbon bar. And the other business I have is a gym. And the gym came about as an opportunity. And in my book, I talk about opportunities, and so the gym was an opportunity, came knocking, and I accepted it.
So as a person, I love your story. And I love the fact that you connected with that story so much. How do you use your businesses to also make an impact on local community? Because I get a sense that you care about the people you have your business in the area. How do you strike that balance of being a positive impact on the community as well?
That's a really good question.
So that wasn't I didn't see you that one ahead of time.
I think it's just a matter of trying to just connect with people by just sharing your businesses and just trying to invite them in your businesses here. And with the gym, we're a small community gym and we try to keep it that way. And with the coffee shop here, we do K9 and coffee. So we try to bring people in the community with their dogs, allow them to bring their dogs here and socialize. And Tiki's Playhouse is a doggy daycare boarding facility. So we support our community by having the ability to provide boarding service or pet services for the community. Also, this community that I'm in here is a very small community in Western Howard County called Glenelg, Maryland. And I think there's only about 548 homes out here. It's a small community, and I think it's a close-knit community once you get to know them. And I'm in this area here that I like to refer to as downtown Glenelg, even though it's not officially downtown Glenelg. And all three of my businesses are right here. So I feel that the community supports me, and I support the community by having three businesses right here in this area, and I'm available 24/7 to my community because I sleep and live here at work, so they know where I'm at all the time. I go to the gym and I work out at the gym, and I'm here in a coffee shop selling my bourbon and things like that. So I just think people kind of adapt to me, and people kind of just support me just because of who I am.
So which of your coffees has bourbon in it?
None of them. Came up with another great idea for me, so thank you. So tonight I'll be writing a pad at 2 o'clock in the morning, writing this note in the pad, because that's what happens. Is your brain just doesn't stop. So in the middle of the night I wake up and I go, "Oh, that's a great idea. Thank you, Doc." And I'm sitting around.
So just make sure you give me a portion of proceeds of that. There you go.
Sounds good. 10% royalty.
There you go. 10%. So you have a mantra, and I love your mantra: learn, earn, and return. Tell us about that. What it means to you in your life.
That's a great question. Learn, earn, return. I would love to say I was the first person who came up with it, but I heard about it somewhere, or I read about it somewhere. So I really can't, I don't know who to credit. But what I adopted from learn, earn, and return is that as an entrepreneur, it's all about learning. And so every day you learn. And I think as you're an entrepreneur and as you grow, you're always learning. And I kind of learned that from my father, to be honest with you, because he's always been reading books and picking up any kind of book or any kind of magazine and just constantly learning. And he's a serial entrepreneur himself and just constantly learning. So that's where the learn comes in. The earn for me is earn your potential, earn your wealth, or whatever it is that you're looking for, earn it, and then return. So it's about earning, going through your good days, your bad days, going through your blood, sweat, and tears, earning, and then return. Return is giving back. giving back to those, helping those, paying it forward, helping other young entrepreneurs achieve their goals and helping them with their journey. So that's where learn, earn, return comes from. And I even have a bracelet that I wear on my arm, and it has learn, earn, return on the bracelet as a reminder for me to, learn, earn, and give it back. And there's a famous quote that I think Muhammad Ali, gosh, I have it on my phone here somewhere. I don't want to mess it up, but it's something about your servant's towel. Gosh, I'll find it here in a second and tell you what it is, but it's something about your servant's towel. Oh, here it is. Sorry. I hate to be looking at my phone here, but I don't want to mess this up. Muhammad Ali, I love this quote of his, is service to others is the rent you pay for the room here on earth.
Oh, I like that.
So I keep that on my phone. So service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. And that's where return comes in for me. Service to others, giving back.
I love that. That is so meaningful. I'm curious, as you think about advice you would have, I know you wrote this book for entrepreneurs to pick up and read, but if you have a young Calvin who is thinking about this is a path they want to go on, what advice do you have for the young entrepreneur?
I like to always say, don't do it. Walk away. Don't do it. A 9-to-5 is stable. Stay with your 9-to-5. I would say the one advice that I go back to, again, I go back to this advice, which is be willing to change. You can't be too stubborn and too set in your career. You can't be too stubborn and set saying it's my way or the highway. You have to be willing to adapt and move every 3 years. And a great book that I like is Who Moved the Cheese? I don't know if you read that book before.
I did.
And I've read that book about 3 or 4 times now about who moved your cheese. And it's all about, adapting and not getting comfortable. Like, was it him and Hall in the book? It's about who moved your cheese. And so the only advice I would get, the best advice I would give somebody is don't get comfortable. Be willing to move every 3 years. Be willing to reinvent yourself every 3 years, and embrace people's suggestions, embrace people's comments, and embrace a mentor that has been there that can help you through the good, the bad, and the ugly times.
And that's powerful. I love to ask my guests my second favorite question. What do you want your legacy to be?
I would love to have a legacy where when people talk about Kelvin Abrams, they talk about, number one, how hard of a worker he was, how creative of a person he was, and then also how he tried to give back and to help others. I generally like to say it. I'm a very generous person, a very giving and caring person, and I am. And at times, I get pushed to my limits for sure, especially being a business owner. You have a target on your back. So at times you get pushed to your limit, but I'm generally a giving and caring person. So I would love for my legacy to be a serial entrepreneur who was giving, caring, and wanted to help others.
Love that. And that's good to know. People say that about you when you're gone. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough road, and that's one of the things that my banker told me years ago. This is why I really love her, is that it's a dark road. Being an entrepreneur is a very dark road. There is no light at the end of the tunnel. There is no stop. There is no, okay, here's a finish line. There is none of that as an entrepreneur. And so, you have to be willing to walk in the dark, and you have to be willing to walk alone. And that's the challenging part. And I would encourage people, before they want to become an entrepreneur, to actually talk to an entrepreneur and learn about the good, bad, and ugly. Because there are a lot of days where you're going to be walking in the dark alone, and you have one person to look up to. And for me, I look up, and I have my cross, and I pray on my cross, and I have it here in my shirt, and I kiss and I pray my cross. And then every day I hold my cross, and I thank God for another day, and I thank God for another opportunity. So every day I wake up, before my feet hit the ground, I thank the Lord for another day, and I thank the Lord for another opportunity. And I say that because every day is an opportunity. As I see it, every day is an opportunity as an entrepreneur.
Always someone told me about the train. It's like, make sure that light in the tunnel is not a train.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been hit by a few trains. Let me
That's
tell you.
right.
But you got to get back up. You got to go forward. You got to get back up and
That's
know
right.
that it's going to be all right.
That's right.
I mean, I got hit with Mercer. I had a hip replacement, and I was in a hospital with Mercer for
Wow.
2 weeks. They removed my hip, and so that was a challenging, difficult time. My mom was there to help me. It was a tough time. I was depressed, and they sent a priest down to talk to me because I wasn't eating, and I was just depressed. And I was 38 something years old in the hospital with Mercer. And then I had a severe infection. I thought I was going to die. So yeah, it was some challenging times, And so again, my mom was there to support me, and then I had to rely on faith.
Exactly. So as we wrap up our conversation, what key takeaways do you want the audience to get from our conversation?
Anything is possible. Anything is possible. At the age of 18, I did not think I would have 4 businesses at the age of 55. So anything is possible. The other thing is I want the audience to hear what I have to say, which is being an entrepreneur is a beautiful, wonderful thing. I mean, you write your own checks, you write your own hours, the freedom, it's a beautiful, wonderful thing. But make no mistake about it, it will be the most difficult challenge of your life. So that's the one big takeaway is it's a beautiful thing, but it's going to be a very, very difficult challenge.
Yeah, that's good to know. Where can people find your book and connect with you on social media?
I have a website, kelvinabrams.com. That's Kelvin, Abrams, Abrams.com. The book is also on my website. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can just Google Get Uncomfortable and Change Course. You'll see it there. We have a Facebook page for Get Uncomfortable or Change Course. There's a Facebook page for all of my businesses, K9 and Coffee, Tiki's Playhouse, American Fitness Express. So yeah, if you just Google Kelvin Abrams, I'm pretty much on the internet. I'm out there. So if you just Google Kelvin Abrams, you'll be able to find me.
And the new business, Coffee Brewski, that's coming up next.
That's going to be coming up next. Right. So at 2:00 in the morning, I'm going to be emailing you, letting you my initial impressions about what we're going to do. What we're going to do with this coffee and bourbon.
It's called a warmth and comfort.
I like it. Maybe we can sell it to Uncle News.
There you go.
I mean, since I got the hookup and all, right?
You got the hookup. That's right.
Warmth and comfort.
It's like, it's not your daddy's Starbucks or whatever.
That's right. Forget about Starbucks.
Robert, thanks so much for being a guest on the podcast and giving us an enjoyable look into what it means to be an entrepreneur, and blessings on the work you do and the businesses you're starting and the impact you're having in the world. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.